has been placed on once the character has been painted, we're going to place the character on different layers. To do this, we're going to utilize the cutter tool. Now, the cutter tool can be found, is shared with the same in the same place where you would find your select tool. So this black arrow here is the select tool. You click down on it, you go over while still holding down, clicking the mouse, and then you go down to what is called your cutter tool. Now, your cutter tool is what we'll be using for as the main tool to be cutting up our character. Because as it stands now, these two drawings they're on one layer, and we want them to be on their own layers and to cut them up. So what you're going to do, you make sure that you're on the cutter tool, and you're going to highlight the entire character. So notice I'm using my lasso tool and I'm highlighting around it. So let's start off with the front view. So notice that the character has been selected with the cutter tool, and you'll notice that it has this kind of green outline around it. That is how you know that you're on your cutter tool. When you select objects with your select tool, they will appear orange. Now, what you need to do now is to go to edit, and you go down to create drawing from drawing selection. And the shortcut, so instead of going to edit, create drawing from drawing selection, I'll be pressing the shortcut F9, which is function, not F and 9, you know, but your function 9 key. So you click on that, and this dialog box appears, which is, you know, it's asking you to name the drawing that you want. Now, I want to place this on a completely different layer. So what I will do is I'm going to create a new layer here where it says layer name. So let me just name it view. I'm just going to name it view for short. And notice here in this little checkbox, it says cut artwork from source. For now, I'm not going to click on this icon because if you cut from art source, it's actually moving it from its existing layer, which is right now it's on the drawing layer here. And it will move it from here to another, but I want to create like somewhat like a duplicate. So we're just going to leave this blank for now, and I'm going to click OK. Now I want you to notice what has happened when I do that. Notice that it automatically down here in the layers, it creates a new layer called view. So you determine the name by typing it there, and it creates that view layer. So that is the first layer right there. I'm going to go back to the drawing layer. In fact, what I'm also going to do, I'm going to bring down my timeline to 2 frames. So now I'm now between 2 frames. I'm going to go back to the drawing layer, and I'm going to what I should have done first was to extend the drawing layer, to extend the exposure. So now the drawing layer in which I digitized this character over on, it's on two frames. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go over into frame 2, and then I'm going to select my cutter tool, and now I'm going to select this drawing, including this hand that I had created, and go to highlight the character like that. And once that is done, I'm going to press F9, function 9 on my keyboard, and it bring up this dialog box. Remember, you can go to edit and click create drawing from drawing selection, but I want you to get the habit of using your shortcuts. And what we're going to do now, notice here that I didn't have to type a new layer. View is the layer that appears right here. So what this is telling me is that it's going to cut this drawing from the existing drawing layer and put it onto the view layer. So when I click OK now, it's now putting the second drawing. Let me zoom in a bit closer so you can see. It put the second drawing here on frame 2. So remember, on the drawing layer, in which we used to trace over our character, we had both drawings on this same layer. But what I wanted was to cut them and put them on a new layer where, let me turn off the drawing layer. Because right now, I have the front drawing on frame number 1. And I have the 3/4 drawing on frame number 2. So instead of having both of the drawings appear on one layer at the same time, I have them separate on two separate layers, on two separate frames. So they're on the same view layer, but they're on two different. So the front view is on frame 1, and the 3/4 front view is on frame 2. Now, why did I do this? The reason why I did this, let me go back to the PowerPoint. So the PowerPoint will show you the step-by-step procedure as well. But in this case, the PowerPoint uses 3 views. It's front, 3/4 front, and profile. I'm using the front and 3/4 front. That is why I only have 2 frames. If you were doing a three character rig, you would need to do it for the 3 views. If you're doing 4 characters, you need to do it for the 4 views. And it's a lot of work when you do it like that. But the reason why I put them on different frames is because we want to line up the views so that they overlap. It should be they overlap. You should now have all, so yeah, so what do I mean by overlapping? All right, so notice this front view, when I was rigging the Dino Boy, this front view was on its own layer, and what I did was to use the onion skin. And I use the onion skin and I position the character in the center of this. I'm going to position the character in the center of the screen, use the onion skin and line them up in the center so that it can appear as if he's turning. So I'm going to do that now. The next step is to line them up so that they overlap. So make sure you turn on your onion skin, and when I have my onion skin on, you can see that I'm seeing the green outline of the 3/4 front. If I go over to the frame number 2, I'm seeing the red outline of the front view. However, I want my drawings to be in the center of the screen. Earlier, I switched over to my cutter tool, but now I'm going to switch over to my select tool, where I'll highlight the character like this. And I'm just going to use my arrow key and move it over. I'm holding down shift while I'm using my arrow key. I can also use my mouse if I'm holding down shift and dragging across. Oops, let me undo that. Wasn't working. Yeah, what? No, alright. For now, let us just use the arrow key, because when you hold down shift, it's supposed to lock it on its axis. Not doing that. And now I'm going to now select the front view, and this is why I'm using my arrow key so that you can get it precisely side by side. So notice what I'm doing. I move the front view over the 3/4 view. They're on the same layer, but it's that I'm using the onion skin. Now you see, when I go between frame 1 and 2, it will now appear as if the character is doing kind of like a body turn. Like he's now in the front view and he's now in the 3/4 front view. Why is this important? This is important so that when the animator is animating the character, he's able to substitute the different drawings in the exact position. So say for example, a character is to do a head turn. He can simply substitute the drawing and it will substitute in the same exact position. You see, if I hadn't moved them over each other and I was to rig them side by side, when the animator is to do a drawing substitution, the head would appear all the way over here, which we wouldn't want that. So that is why it is very important for us to line the character over on top of the other one. If we were doing 3 views, we would then line the profile view in the same position. 4 views, you put the 3/4 front in the same position, and the back. If you're doing 5 views, you make sure all of them, so that if you were to press play, it would look as if the character is turning around. So that is the first step in terms of lining up the character. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Now, the next step is once you line them up in the exact same position, meaning your front and your 3/4 front, the next step is to cut up the character into different parts. So now it says all your views should now be overlapping. And we're going to continue to use function 9, F9 key, with the cutter tool. Very important that you use the cutter tool to cut up the character's body parts. And as you cut up the character's body parts, you're going to have to name them as you go along. So I'm going to start off with the front view for the character. Let me turn off, so I don't need to use the onion skin anymore. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to start off with the head. So I'm going to go over to the cutter tool, and I'm going to draw a highlight around the head. So notice I'm highlighting the head of the character. So now the head of the character is highlighted with the cutter tool. I'm going to press function 9, F9, and in this area where it says layer name, I'm going to create a new layer name. Now I'm going to call this BEAU underscore head. Now, why did I name it view underscore head? Whenever you're creating your cutout characters, it is important that this is for industry standard. It is important that we establish the name of the character. So all of your character body parts should have the character's name. This is important because when you have more than one characters in your scene, and let's say both characters, the drawing part name head, and you're in the network view, you don't know which character the head belongs to. But if you put a name in front of it, so let's say a head name, another character, the name is Sarah. You name it Sarah head, Sarah eye, Sarah nose, Sarah mouth, Sarah arm, hand, Sarah foot. So you would every time you name a new body part, you put the name in front of it. And then you label the body part. So now I'm going to click OK. And no, we're not going to click this option. So leave this option, cut from art source, leave that blank. Click OK. And what happens is that now it creates a new layer for the front view. So notice here we have this layer called view. But seeing that I did that, it creates a new layer that's called view head. Now, if I was to, you can clearly see that the character's head is now separate from the rest of the body, because here is more transparent and here is fully opaque. But I'm going to introduce you to a new view. This view is called your drawing view. Right now, all this time we've been using our camera view to do our animations and our artwork. But in order for us to edit the individual drawing parts in isolation, we'll need to use the drawing view. Now, if you look over to your tab here, on my tab, I have this tab called drawing. And if you look, if I'm going to expand it some more, notice that in this drawing view here, I am only seeing the head of the character that was cut up. If you go over to your camera view, notice that everything is select, like if I select everything will be selected. But if I select, let's say I select the head, notice the head is over here. So now if I want to erase certain parts, I can edit the head. So for example, I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup. Let's say I want to get rid of this part here, which is the neck. I can select that part and press delete, and it delete. Because when you see, the thing is, when I cut the head from the body, it cut off a little piece of the neck. When really I just wanted the head by itself in the drawing view. We're going to cut up the character some more. So, for example, I would like to cut the eyes, because we want the eyes to be separate. We want the pupil to be separate. We want the nose, the mouth, the ears, the eyebrow. We want all of that to be separate. So once again, I'm going to go back to my cutter tool. Click and hold, and you go over to your cutter tool. I'm going to zoom in. Let us start. Let us start with the ears. I'm going to start cutting the ears. So just highlight the ears. Whenever you're highlighting your areas, it's always best to have a little bit more highlighted than to have less. Because I could have gone ahead and then tried to toe the line like this, but I could accidentally get it where, notice that I only got a part of it missing. Because when you try and highlight and you get a little bit more over, you can always erase that extra bit from your drawing view. So I'm going to press function 9. And notice it come up with view. Well, I'm going to leave that first part and I'm going to name this view underscore ear. But I'm not going to just leave it at ear. I'm going to put at the end of it 0, 1. Now, this is just another industry standard that I learned from the animation studio. You see, anything, because it could have been called left ear or right ear. But some persons, depending on who you ask, they will probably call over here your right side and over here your left side, depending on which side you're using. It could be your left or my left. So what they do is that they set up a convention, a system where any body part that is on this side would be labeled as 1. Any body part that is over on this side would be labeled as 2. So for example, your eyes, this would be I1 and the other one over here would be I2. Your pupil, pupil 1, pupil 2. Your arm 1, arm 2 over here. The only things that wouldn't have numbers is the nose, the mouth, and the head. The thing is, you only have one head. So you wouldn't put 0, 1 head at the end of it. You only do it for the body parts that come in pairs. Like your legs, your arms, your hands, your eyes, stuff like that. I want to click OK. And notice that it creates a new layer. So we have the head layer here. And notice it creates a new layer called ear. Also notice that it took off a little bit more than I should have, which is not a problem. Because in the drawing view, you have a process that is called cleanup. Now what you do is that you select a certain part and you start to remove the unnecessary parts of the ear. Switch over to the select tool so you can see. So I can delete this little part from it. This line here is a part of the head. So I can delete that part right there. And right there you can see that this part has been cleaned up. But I'm just showing you, usually I would just cut up the entire character and then do the cleanup process later. But I'm just showing you, some persons tend to, as they cut it up, they clean it up as they cut it up in the drawing view. But how I go about it, I cut up all of the drawing parts and then later I do all of the cleanup. That's another process in the rigging. You clean up your drawings when you cut them up. All right, so that is the first ear. Going to switch back over to my cutter tool. Notice now that and the rest of the body part is looking transparent. That is because I'm on the ear layer. What I need to do is to select back the head layer, and then now I can just highlight the ear like that, and then I press function 9. And now you notice that you see view underscore ear 01. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the 1 to a 2 and click OK, and that will create a new layer. So now in my drawing view, I have a separate drawing over here for the ear. Later on, I'll clean this up, but I'm just going to cut up another body part. I'll go back to the head layer because now I'm cutting the drawings from the head layer. Click on your cutter tool. I'm going to start with this eye. You just highlight it. I'm going to press function 9. And now, instead of putting it on view ear 1, I'm going to change the ear. I'm going to change this to eye 01 because anything that is on this side would be labeled as 1. You click OK. And each time you cut them, you can see that it's now starting to create a new layer. And this is how the eye looks within the drawing view. Go over now, back to the head layer.